Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to part 3 of my tutorial for chapter 8 of the third edition of the Zelle Python programming book. And in part 3, we're going to do another exercise that builds on what we've already been working on. Okay, so I'm going to paste in the already baked version of my tutorial example. And this is the tutorial version of process file 1 integer per line. Okay, and let's take a look at this. And this really builds on the first two things that we did, where we were processing a series of integers. In that case, they were being entered at the command line on the console by the user, and we were waiting for them to enter a sentinel value in order to know that we were done with all of the input. In this case, we're going to have another kind of loop. It's very closely related to the sentinel loop, and a lot of us call it the end of file loop. And so what's really different is, instead of reading the values from the console, we're going to be opening a file and reading them a text file, one line at a time. And in this case, there's going to be 1 integer per line of input. And we're going to do essentially the same processing. We're leaving that the same. Again, the processing that I'm doing is going to be different from the process that you're doing on your exercise. I'm doing this bit again where I count the negatives, the zeros, and the positives. And you're going to be doing another analysis. And then when we come to the end, we're going to print out either, if we didn't get any input at all, if we got an empty file as input, we're going to say you did not provide any integers to process, just like we did when they were coming from the console. Or if we got integers to process, we're going to print the results essentially the same way that we did when they were coming from the console. So feel free to take the last version of the program that you have and refactor it into this one. I'm pretty sure that's what I did. Okay. So what's different? Well, we have here what is kind of interesting is we had, in the last version that we did, we had created a Boolean end of input, and we were using that as the condition for the main loop. Okay. It turns out that we're just going to sense the end of input in a different way, right? The way, well, actually, it's not really that different, because when we're using this read line method to read a line of text at a time, when we reach end of file, instead of getting a proper string, we get the empty string. Well, isn't that the way we were signaling that we were done when we were doing it at the console? So we don't have to change a lot of code here. We do have to manage the files. Okay, so here's what we're doing. We're getting the name of the input file. We are we're getting the name of the input file here. We are opening it for reading. That's happening right there. we're going to process our way through. The way that we get another line is not to prompt for another line of input, but just to do a read line on the in file. And we go around, and then when we're done, we're going to check if in fact we got any input at all. If we didn't, we're going to print a message to tell the user. If we did get input, then we're going to print the 3 totals, and then we're done. Okay, now I've provided data files for you to use. These are the data files that we're going to test your program with. So you should test your program with the same data files. The 2 that we're going to use for this is one empty file. Let's look at what's in that. Nothing. Okay. And a single file. Okay. This is one that has a single entry per line. And you can see that we've got single integers on each of the lines. We've got 10 entries. Okay. All right. So let's give it a run. Okay. So I'm going to run this. And let's make that output a little bigger. And the first thing that I always want to do is I'm going to make sure if I have an empty file that I don't do anything bad. And I don't. I said you did not provide any integers to process. So we responded very gracefully. Okay. All right. Well, how about if I really have some real integers to process, like in single file.txt? Let's run it again. And the file is single file.txt. And there we go. So we say the number that's less than 0 is a 2. There's 1 that's a 0, and there are 7 that are positive. Let's just go look at that. Okay, how about this? Okay, so negative integers, 2. Yeah, I see 2 minus signs. Zeros, I see 1. Okay, that makes sense. And the rest are all positive, so there's another 7 of those. Okay, that seems to work just fine. Okay, so that's it. Again, the way that I got this was by taking the work that I had done in part 2 and refactoring it to work with an input file rather than the console. And it was pretty easy to do and should be pretty straightforward for you to do as well. So I'm going to leave you to do it, this part 3 work, and I'll see you again in part 4. Bye-bye.